The faint pulse of neon signs shimmered against the dusky sky as Jason pulled his dusty pickup to a stop outside Murphy's Bar, a weathered little place tucked off Highway 52 near Montgomery, Alabama. It wasn't much to look at, just a reliable pit stop for truckers, drifters, and locals chasing a cold beer in a quiet booth. Jason, only a week home from deployment, wasn't looking for trouble or conversation. He just needed a few minutes of peace before facing the whirlwind of normal life again. He pushed open the creaky door and stepped into a low hum of chatter, the scratchy voice of Johnny Cash spilling from a battered jukebox in the corner. Scanning the room, he caught sight of a few regulars chalking up pool cues, a noisy group trading stories at the bar, and a handful of loners nursing their beers without a word. Keeping to himself, Jason slipped into a shadowed booth at the back, his fatigues blending into the dim light, except for the battered Converse on his feet, shoes picked for comfort, not for show. He ordered a water, cradling the glass between his hands as his mind drifted toward the home-cooked meals and bright-eyed niece waiting for him just down the road. The peace shattered when the door slammed open, and 6 men stomped in, boots heavy against the warped floorboards. Older, grizzled, their leather jackets stitched with faded patches that spoke of long-past service, they roared with laughter and backslaps as they claimed space at the bar. Jason barely spared them a glance, focusing on his drink, but the biggest among them, a burly man with a salt-and-pepper beard and eyes sharp enough to cut, froze mid-chuckle when he caught sight of Jason. A few muttered words, and suddenly all 6 were staring, their loud camaraderie cooling into something tighter, more brittle. Jason felt the shift, recognized that look, the one that weighed and judged without ever asking a question. He sipped his water, tuning his ears to the jukebox and not the tension prickling in the air. At the bar, the group clustered closer, voices low and charged. Something the leader said drew a harsh laugh, followed by a sidelong glance at Jason. Still, he stayed loose, posture easy but senses dialed in, every fiber trained by years of knowing when trouble was about to kick up. What had started as a quiet night out was tilting into something else entirely. The heavy thud of boots broke the thin wall of sound as the group made a beeline toward his table. The bearded leader, front and center, gaze locked like a wolf eyeing its mark. The bartender froze mid-pour, and conversation across the bar dried up as everyone sensed the brewing storm. Jason casually set his glass down and leaned back, calm mask in place, even as a current of readiness coursed through him. "Hey!" the leader barked, halting a few feet from Jason, his voice raw and carrying a sour edge. "Nice uniform you got there. What did you do, snag it from a Halloween aisle?" The men behind him barked sharp, ugly laughs. Jason looked up, his expression unreadable. He'd survived worse. "It's mine," he said simply. "Earned it." The leader scoffed, pretending surprise. "Earned it, huh? Funny, 'cause I've known real soldiers and they don't stomp around in sneakers like that. You fishing for sympathy? Maybe hoping someone'll buy you a beer?" Jason's jaw flexed, but his tone stayed smooth. "Don't need sympathy. Don't need a handout. Just here to mind my business." The leader's lip curled as he leaned in close enough that Jason could smell the stale beer on his breath. "You don't look like no soldier to me," he sneered. "Where's your boots? Your tags? Bet you couldn't even snap off a salute if your life depended on it." One of the men jeered. "Probably couldn't tell us jack about basic training." Another chimed in, louder. "Hell, I bet he's never even been overseas." Their cackling scraped against the low whine of the jukebox. Jason stayed silent, eyes calm but tracking every move, every breath. He wasn't scared. He was calculating. His time in the service had taught him better than to rise to bait, but something about the scene gnawed at him. The cheap disrespect, the smallness of it. "I don't owe you anything," Jason said at last, voice steady as a stone, even as the leader's smirk faded into something colder, more dangerous. The dim neon buzz outside barely pierced the thick dusk as Cole rolled his battered pickup into the lot of Murphy's Tavern, a no-frills dive tucked just off Highway 67 in Tennessee. The place wasn't much, just a homey pit stop for locals, long-haul truckers, and folks chasing a little piece with their beer. Fresh, back from a deployment, Cole wasn't looking for trouble, just a quiet hour before he faced real life again. He pushed through the weathered door, letting the murmur of conversation and the scratchy croon of Johnny Cash wash over him. The crowd was the usual mix. Some regulars locked in a slow game of pool, a few laughs bubbling up at the bar, loners nursing drinks in silence. Cole wasn't here to meet anyone. He just needed to breathe. Settling into a back booth with a clear line of sight, he blended easily into the tavern's shadowy corners, his worn fatigues barely noticeable except for the beat-up sneakers on his feet, picked for comfort over looks. He ordered a water and sat quietly, his mind drifting toward home. His mom's Sunday dinners, his niece's high-pitched squeals. He was snapped back by the door slamming open. 6 men stomped inside, the thud of heavy boots filling the room. They were older, their battered leather jackets flaunting military patches and faded slogans. They roared with laughter, slapping each other's backs, commanding the space. Cole barely glanced up, but the biggest of them, a thick-set man with a silver-streaked beard and cold, calculating eyes, spotted him and froze mid-laugh. A muttered word passed among them, and, just like that, the air in Murphy's tightened. Cole felt their gaze like a weight, but kept his eyes on his drink, the jukebox scratchy twang struggling against the silence creeping in. Huddled at the bar, the men whispered and chuckled, throwing him the kind of looks Cole had seen before, the ones that didn't bother asking questions before passing judgment. His instincts prickled, but he stayed loose, not rising to the bait. The leader, unable to resist, peeled away from the group and lumbered toward Cole's booth, a shark zeroing in. The chatter died. Even the bartender stiffened behind the counter, sensing the shift. Cole set his glass down, his face a mask of calm even as the tension in the room turned sharp. "Hey," the man barked, standing just a step too close. "Nice outfit. Pick it up at a costume shop?" His buddies hooted behind him, their laughter thick with mockery. Cole met his stare, steady as stone. "It's mine," he said simply. "Earned it." The man snorted, feigning surprise. "Earned it, huh? Funny. Real soldiers don't wear ratty sneakers with their gear. You looking for sympathy, or maybe a free round?" Cole's jaw tightened, but his voice stayed even. "Not looking for anything except a little peace." The man's smirk twisted mean. He leaned in, his breath sour with beer. "You don't look like no soldier to me. Where's your boots, your tags? Bet you couldn't even tell me what happens in basic." His friends barked in laughter again, the sound grating. Cole let it wash over him, his years of training holding him steady. He'd fought bigger battles than this. "I don't owe you anything," he said coolly. "And if you're thinking about starting something here, you might want to rethink it." For a beat, the room hung in silence, the tension almost crackling, but the man wasn't ready to back off. "Got a smart mouth," he growled. "Let's see if it's as fast as your fists." And just like that, he lunged. Sloppy, predictable. Cole barely had to think. He shifted smoothly, catching the man's wrist mid-swing, twisting it behind his back and slamming him face first against the booth's edge with practiced ease. The man let out a yelp, all his bravado leaking away. Gasps erupted across the bar. His crew froze, stunned by how quickly their leader was pinned. Cole's voice sliced through the silence, calm, unshaken. "Told you. Should have thought twice." He leaned in a little, his grip ironclad but careful. "You have no idea who you're messing with." The leader writhed but couldn't break free. One of his buddies edged forward, hands half raised. "Hey, man, just let him go. No harm meant." Cole's gaze locked onto him, cold and clear. "He came at me. You all saw it. He cools off. I let go." The bartender, who'd been frozen with the phone in hand, finally found his voice. "Might be best if you all clear out, before it gets ugly." But the leader, Hank, someone muttered, wasn't ready to slink away. Even pinned, he snarled, "Call the cops. This guy assaulted me, impersonating military." Cole released him with a firm shove. Hank stumbled forward, cradling his twisted arm and shooting a venomous glare back at Cole. "You're gonna pay for this," he hissed. His friends circled up, one fumbling out a phone to dial 911, his voice loud and shaking. "Yeah, officer? We got a guy here pretending to be a soldier. Just attacked my buddy." Cole stood still, heart steady even as his mind raced. He knew how this could look, knew how easily the truth could get twisted. But he also knew he had nothing to hide. His years, his service, his sacrifices, they would speak louder than any drunken lies. The tavern buzzed with whispers now, some folks eyeing him with doubt, others with a kind of quiet respect. No one stepped forward, not yet. Outside, the rising wail of sirens shattered the night, red and blue lights flickering through the smoky windows. The front door swung wide open, and the night was far from over. Two officers pushed through the swinging doors, cutting through the thick tension like a blade. One was a burly man with a tight buzz cut and mirrored shades masking his expression, while the other was a sharp-eyed woman who moved with quiet authority. Their arrival sucked the noise out of the room, every pair of eyes snapping toward them. "We got a call about a disturbance," the male officer said, his tone firm but even. Hank, still clutching his wrist and red-faced with anger, wasted no time. He jabbed a trembling finger at Terrence. "That guy jumped me. He's pretending to be a soldier. Look, no real boots, nothing." The officers shifted their focus to Terrence, who stood by his table, calm and composed, his stance steady but ready. "Is that true?" the male officer asked, voice unreadable. Terrence met his gaze without flinching. "No, sir. They confronted me because they didn't believe I served. When he grabbed for me, I defended myself, that's all." The female officer stepped forward, her gaze sweeping the bar. "Did anyone witness this?" she asked, her words cutting clean through the heavy silence. Finally, the bartender spoke up. "I saw it. Hank threw the first punch. The soldier just defended himself." A few murmurs of agreement rippled through the patrons. Someone near the jukebox added, "Yeah, Hank's been spoiling for a fight since he walked in." The male officer turned back to Terrence. "Do you have any ID, sir?" Terrence nodded, moving slowly and pointing to the duffel bag at his feet. "My uniform's in there with name and rank. Also got my wallet and ID." The officer carefully pulled out the neatly folded fatigues, the patches and insignias clear as day. After a quick inspection and a subtle nod from his partner, the officer straightened. "You're good. Thanks for cooperating." he said, his voice respectful. Hank, still seething, barked, "You're just taking his word?" He could have faked that junk. The female officer fixed him with a glare sharp enough to cut glass. "Enough. From what I'm hearing, you're lucky he's not pressing charges." Hank's bravado crumbled, leaving him glaring at the floor while his friends shifted awkwardly. "Here's the deal," the male cop continued. "We're filing a report. You want to press charges, fine. But be advised, false reports are a serious offense." Hank opened his mouth, but thought better of it, sinking into bitter silence. As the officers backed off, the tension in the bar began to loosen. The female officer gave Terrence a small nod. "Thanks for keeping your cool. We'll make sure the record's straight." Terrence returned the nod, steady as ever. "Appreciate it, ma'am." One by one, Hank and his crew shuffled out, the swagger drained from their steps, Hank shooting one last empty glare before disappearing into the night. The officers followed soon after, letting the hum of conversation slowly reclaim the space. Terrence eased back into his seat, his drink still untouched, the weight of the encounter heavy but manageable. Around him, patrons whispered and cast him new looks, not of suspicion, but of respect. A few days later, under the warm slant of the Carolina sun, Terrence wiped grease from his hands, working under the hood of his old pickup out front of his modest home just outside Durham, North Carolina. Though the afternoon was peaceful, his mind lingered on the bar fight, not because he was rattled, but because the doubt he'd faced wasn't new and wouldn't be the last. The crunch of tires on gravel snapped him from his thoughts. He straightened up, rag in hand, as a motorcycle rumbled into his driveway. Hopping off the bike was a wiry guy in an oversized leather jacket. Bill, one of Hank's boys from the bar. Helmet in hand, Bill approached slowly, his movements hesitant, almost like he was trying not to spook a dog. "Hey, you Terrence, right?" he asked, voice cautious. Ben stood quietly, giving a small nod but keeping his guard up, waiting for whatever was coming next. Mike shifted awkwardly, digging his hands into the two loose pockets of his leather jacket. "I, just wanted to come by and say, I'm sorry for what went down at the bar," he mumbled. Ben raised an eyebrow, more curious than convinced. "You were part of it," he said in a calm, even voice. Mike nodded, his cheeks reddening with shame. "I know. I didn't stop it, and I should have. Hank, he's good at stirring people up. I got caught up in it, but that doesn't make it right. I've been thinking about it a lot." Ben studied him for a moment, reading the unease written all over the man's face. "Why now?" he asked, his voice steady. Mike shrugged, staring at the dusty toes of his boots. "Because it's the right thing to do. And because seeing how you handled yourself, it made me realize just how wrong we were. You didn't deserve any of that." Silence hung between them for a beat before Ben pushed off the truck and crossed his arms. "What are you looking for, Mike?" he asked. "Forgiveness, maybe," Mike said, lifting his eyes with a raw sincerity. "But more than that, I want to be better. I've seen too much hate in my life. I don't want to be part of it anymore. What we did, that's not who I want to be." Ben's expression softened just a little. He'd heard a lot of apologies over the years, some hollow, some heartfelt. This one, it felt real, not because of the words, but because Mike had shown up at all. "I appreciate you coming," Ben said at last. "It doesn't wipe away what happened, but it's a start." Mike nodded quickly, a wave of relief crossing his face. "Thanks, man. Really." He swung his leg over the bike, started the engine, and with a final nod pulled away down the gravel drive. Ben watched him go, a strange knot of emotions tightening in his chest. The scene at the bar had been an ugly reminder of the prejudice he still faced, but Mike's apology was a flicker of something better, a crack of light. He turned back to his old Ford, wiping his hands on a worn rag, the low whir of cicadas rising in the cooling Arkansas air. The last few days had been heavy, but they also sharpened his resolve. The battle against ignorance wasn't fought only in distant lands. Sometimes it played out right here, in bars, on porches, and in the hearts of everyday folks. And, as far as Ben was concerned, those battles mattered just as much. He tightened the last bolt under the hood, the sun dipping low behind the trees, and stood a little taller, ready to meet whatever came next, with the same quiet strength that had carried him through every other fight.